Hello and welcome to today's webinar. First of all, thank you for tuning in, wherever you're tuning in from. I think we have attendees from all over the world for this session, which is always good to see. My name is James. I'm the content manager here at Lunio. I'll be the one hosting the discussion today, asking the questions, and hopefully keeping us on track for time. We're aiming for around 45 minutes to cover all the key points we want to get to, so we should be okay. And I'll cover a few other minor bits of housekeeping in just a moment. But as you all know, the topic for this session is paid media in the age of automation, from Performance Max to smart targeting. Very much on trend at the moment, a lot of discussion going on in the PPC world around this. And I'm joined by three very well qualified speakers on the panel today who will undoubtedly have lots of practical insights and advice to share with us. So firstly, we have Google Ads specialist Bob Mayer. How are you doing today, Bob?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
And on a previous call, when we were kind of preparing for the webinar, you kind of showed us the setup you're currently in a van, living the digital nomad lifestyle. So where are you actually based at the moment?
Currently on a very great parking lot in the northern part of Spain. So not really sexy, but excellent for
work. Where's next on the trip? Are you staying within Spain, or are you moving on from Spain?
Yeah, we move around, I think 100 kilometers a week. So we are heading west towards Galicia. So I guess we will be moving in a couple of days and hop into nature again.
Nice. I'm kind of jealous, but yeah, maybe one day I'll get my own van.
Nice.
Next, we've got Miles McNair, also a good Google Ads expert. And for those that may not know, Bob and Miles often work and collaborate together, so it's great to have them both here with us today. How are you doing, Miles?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this.
I saw on LinkedIn, Miles, you're doing some marathon training.
Yeah.
So how's that going? When is the marathon?
Yeah, it's in November. So I have about, let's say, 2 months more to train. And next week, I actually have to train 26 kilometers. And that's the furthest that I've ever gone. So for me, the most important thing is to preserve my knees and try not to destroy them, because I've had a bad reputation experience of getting injured. So it's tricky, but yeah, it's a cool challenge that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, good luck. I think it would literally kill me off on my knees too. So all the best.
You just got to go slow. Thanks.
And last, but by no means least, we've got our very own Leonardo Pizarro, head of demand gen at Lunio. Some of you may recognize him from some of our previous webinars. Bonus points if you've been to those. How are you doing today, Leo?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. Love how you emphasize on the last name as well.
Yeah, it is a nice last name, to be fair. So, as I mentioned, just a few other quick bits of housekeeping before we get into it today. We are recording this session, obviously, and we'll send it out by email to watch on demand afterwards. We will also be creating a written summary with key takeaways from the discussion today. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow once we've had a chance to write that up. As you've probably already seen, if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat and get the discussion going there. And we'll also be sending out a few polls during the session to get some audience feedback. Obviously, you don't have to vote in the polls if you don't want to, but if you're so inclined, it's always nice to get a snapshot of the different opinions and stances that we've got in the audience here today. Lastly, if you wait till the very end of the webinar, we have got a small surprise to share with everyone. I won't say more about that now, because then it wouldn't really be a surprise, but all will be revealed at the end. So we've got 4 main points to cover on the agenda today, and we'll be moving through these in order. So firstly, how to get the most value out of Performance Max campaigns. Next, we'll talk about improving the accuracy of audience expansion and smart targeting systems. Then we'll move on to the best automated bid strategies to maximize conversions, before closing with a discussion on where paid media automation is heading in the next 5 years. So let's get into it and kick things off. So my first question is for both Bob and Miles, but Bob, maybe if you want to start us off on this one, and Miles, you can follow on afterwards. So what were your first impressions initially coming across Performance Max and other automated targeting systems?
Yeah, great question. I was very skeptical, to be honest, at first. I think a lot of Google Ads specialists are very skeptical by nature because of all the launch F-ups Google Ads had in the past regarding towards smart bidding, broad match, keyword types, and stuff like that. So Google Ads, they used to be very vocal about all the new features they are launching, and they have the tendency to be very vocal at first without getting things right immediately. So that's why I was, again, very skeptical and was a little bit, watching what other people were doing regarding PMax, if they went full in already. Regarding PMax, my initial ideas were, okay, Google Ads is taking away even more control than what we already have, the little bit we have left still. And they are taking away additional insights as well. So I was kind of fearing my job initially. So, okay, here we go again. We're already transitioning towards smart bidding, transitioning towards broad match instead of the good old SCAR structures and stuff like that. So that was my initial thought. But of course, then I waited for some weeks to see the initial results people were getting. I started experimenting with it myself as well, and I started seeing great results actually. And that was the point that I was like, okay, there might be something in this new campaign type. So there's no need to be that skeptical. I think Google Ads is towards the right track over here. And I'm quite happy with the results thus far, actually.
Nice. So you, once you started using Performance Max, you started to get fairly decent results fairly quickly.
I started basically for my e-commerce clients with PMax, and they were mostly focused on transitioning smart shopping towards Performance Max. So I ran basically only product listing ads, only PMax campaigns, where I just connected the feed, didn't add any assets at all, just to make a smooth transition from smart shopping towards Performance Max. That all went great, went okay. I saw the same results as the previous smart shopping campaigns. And then afterwards, I heard people about, oh, I'm actually getting quite some decent results with adding all the assets. And it's not that bad as you think it is. That's when I started experimenting with the full capability of Performance Max by adding all the assets, like all the logos, images, videos, headlines, with additional product feeds if you're an e-com player. And that's when I started to see actually great results.
Nice. And Miles, what was your initial kind of point of contact like? What were your initial thoughts before you got started?
Yeah, well, for me initially, I think I can just second everything Bob is saying about being skeptical. And I think you should be skeptical as a Google Ads specialist, because there's only so limited insights that we can get from all the new automated campaign types. And it is, I guess, rightly so to think that Google is using new campaign types like Performance Max to sell additional ad inventory that they have on YouTube, discovery, display, etc. But for me, like, let's say 3-4 years ago, when the best practice was still to not automate everything and to have your campaign structure as granular as possible with manual bidding and less automated solutions. After a while, Google started introducing new automated solutions like smart bidding. And in the beginning, it was really bad. Broad match was really bad at the beginning. Universal app campaigns was, I think, the first campaign type that was like fully automated. You have an app and it was being marketed on, you don't even know where, but it kind of worked. And then smart shopping came as well. And I think you can see the same trend in every launch, as Bob is also saying in the beginning. It kind of feels like it's not really finished yet, and the performance is just not really good. But then after a while, it just starts to pick up, and magically, because they get a lot more data, it just starts to perform better. And I see the same with Performance Max. I started testing actually in when it was still in beta, officially in beta last year. On a few clients, and it just didn't perform at all. And then recently we started to test again, and it's already a lot better than it was before. Insights are also a lot more extensive than they were before. In the beginning, it was really like almost nothing there, and they keep on adding some small new insights now almost every week. And I do see that the performance is getting better. But yeah, I was skeptical as well. But after a while, I just saw like, yeah, this is just the new way of how it's going to be, and there's no point in me trying to fight the system, when I think you need to really find a way to leverage the system so that you can get the best results. And that is the sort of the mindset that I layer on top of Performance Max, where I don't, I have my doubts and concerns about the product, but there's no use case in that, because I'm not going to change anything about the direction that Google is going towards. And you can see based on the last 3, 4, 5 years, it is getting more automated. So for me, it's just like, how can I make the mental switch? Like, how can I make the most out of it? And that's what I'm trying to do now with my clients. And the results, they speak for themselves. They keep on getting better, but you just got to know what to do. So that's my initial experience with Performance Max.
Yeah, nice. I think it inevitably will be a losing battle if you try and fight the system in that regard.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's better to kind of get ahead of the curve and move before others do.
Yeah.
Just before we get into the kind of the more technicalities of Performance Max, Leo, outside the Google world, what other automation trends are we seeing across platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I feel like some of the biggest changes to how these platforms work happened in the last 6 months, which has just been astronomical. And I think what we're seeing here is the evolution of machine learning and artificial intelligence in advertising. Because let's be honest, the human brain can only process so much information at a time. So these platforms are processing billions of requests a day. And I guess you couple that with what marketers are facing, which is the platform paradox, or just platform fatigue in general. As these platforms expand campaign times, it's becoming harder to decide, okay, what is it that I should go for, and is it, should I invest more in Google ads or Facebook ads? So I'm almost inclined to believe that a lot of these changes are also targeting new users rather than experienced users that have been using Google ads or Facebook ads for the last 5, 10 years. So to give you an answer on that specific bit, I think one of the major changes that we're seeing outside Google ads is specifically with Facebook. So Facebook are really pushing on this Advantage Plus campaign type, which is pretty much a simplified campaign model. Has very limited targeting functionality, very limited on bidding. So it uses conversion metrics to optimize who it should target. LinkedIn following the same suit. So for those advertising on LinkedIn, the B2B space, you'll notice that smart bidding is becoming the default option, pretty much. And then you get platforms like Adroll, a bunch of other platforms that are now pushing what's called smart audiences. So based on historic performance, and I do reiterate, this is really based on historic performance, because without that, you wouldn't go anywhere with it. They're able to pinpoint, okay, we want to target more buyers like James, more buyers like Miles. What do they have in common? Let's try to find them on the internet. So I think all these platforms are kind of competing for the same thing here, and AI is really the way forward to tackle that.
Nice. And have you noticed the similar kind of improvements that Bob and Miles were referring to, where initially they weren't performing as well as you would have liked, and they continue to get better and better? Is that the case?
Mixed results, and I guess speaking with the community, the response I've been getting has been mostly negative, but I'd say more around middle ground, mixed results. And again, it's just reiterating that it's based on the data, the historic performance that you have, how are you feeding that data, how are you optimizing for it, So, you know, with Facebook ads, I mean, we've seen some great results using lookalike audiences based on people that have previously converted. With LinkedIn, if you trust LinkedIn to bid whatever it wants, it's going to be bidding $100, $200 for a click. So, you know, you definitely have to be cautious with how you trust these platforms. You still want to have that manual input in place.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we'll talk a bit more about data quality and control in a second, but let's just get into, you know, the technical side of Performance Max. So Miles, what are the key points marketers should know and understand about how Performance Max works?
Yeah, I think you should probably first zoom into what Performance Max really is, and it's just an automated all-in-one solution to advertise on all of Google's ad inventory. So you have ads on search, shopping, YouTube discovery, display, Gmail, maps, local campaigns, etc. So Google's just bringing that all together. And if you're looking at what are the key points that marketers need to know in order to make it work for them, I think the single most important one is focus on your data input, because it's such an automated system that is driven by AI and machine learning, as Leo was also saying. You need to feed the machine with the correct input, and that input is then being used by the algorithm to predict a specific end result, which is your conversion. And a conversion is different for every business, every account, because I focus primarily on ecom. Bob is focusing primarily on lead gen. He's also doing a lot of ecom, but he's much more focused and experienced in lead gen than I am. And those conversion actions are already a lot different. So it's super important to make sure that the right data is fed into the system. And conversion tracking is one of them. Which is becoming harder now with all of the iOS changes and everything. And I think in the future, it's going to be even harder. But you also have to focus on inputting the right audience data, because it's such an automated targeting system. You can have ads on, let's say, throw search and shopping out of the window for a second, because that's a little bit different. But the YouTube and display and discovery side is heavily focused on audience targeting. And you need to steer the machine sort of in the right direction, especially if you're starting off with new Performance Max campaigns. Then you basically start with a blank canvas, and you need to already beforehand tell Google, like, these are specific audience signals that sort of are like my customers. And what we usually focus on is using your own data, your first party data, to put a buzzword in there. I think that's super important, because Google can then use that data of your existing customer base to find people that are similar to those customers. So that's probably a good one to begin with. And then the importance of your assets. And in this case, assets for PMax are just, if you're ecom, then your product feed is super important. It's probably one of your most important assets, because that's going to determine where and when your ads are going to show for specific searches for specific products. But also your image ads, your video ads, and your ad copy that goes with that. So I think those are some of the most important things. Your campaign structure as well. I just saw, actually, I spoke to another specialist, and they set up a new campaign structure that we also are huge fans of. And he basically went away from using one Performance Max campaigns to a few, like 2 in this case. Can be different for every single case, but he already saw the conversions go up by 4 times, which is insane, and his conversion rates went up 5 to 10x. And I'm not saying that's typical, but that definitely shows like how important your campaign structure is with Performance Max. So I think overarching idea is, even though Performance Max may seem super simplified, I think it's actually becoming a lot harder to get the results that you want to, because you have to think about, there's a lot of thinking that goes into the campaign before you actually set it up. So I think those are some super important ones, as well as knowing how to optimize despite having limited insights. So I'm sure Bob can add some things to that as well, but I think that's those are some of the most important things to think about even before you launch.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get into some of those setup considerations and how to structure campaigns. But obviously, you referenced some pretty impressive results there. But as you said, it's not that's not across the board. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So, Bob, what are the kind of challenges and roadblocks that people run into with Performance Max when it doesn't go to plan?
There are a few actually at this very moment. First of all, I would say the lack of insights. Like Miles already touched on, the insights within PMax are getting broader by every week. So Google Ads is actively working on insights and adding new features within PMax, but there's still a lot of important insights missing. So I think a lot of Google Ads specialists are struggling with that factor. So at this very moment, you can basically only monitor search categories and audience segments your PMax campaign is delivering within. So you can basically have some sort of idea on what kind of terms you're being found on within search and shopping. And you also have some sort of idea what kind of people, Google users you're after, and what kind of in market or affinity trends they have. But there's still much missing in the whole campaign structure. So let in the whole campaign type. So let me give you some examples. For this, at this moment, you can basically only see your week-on-week or month-on-month results within the Insights tab. So that's something that Miles and I are very missing. So we would like to see some kind of data selector like we have in other campaign types, so we can see the performance, see the insights over a very shorter or maybe a longer period. So if you're now 2 months ahead and you want to see on what kind of search categories you were found 2 months ago, that's not possible because you can only refer month on month and week on week. Also, the statistics in the Insights tab are very limited. So you can see a very brief overview, for example, on what search categories you're getting found. But you have to use some sort of drop-down functionality where you can select your conversion value or maybe the amount of clicks or maybe conversion rate, and it changes. But we would like to see like a brief table overview so you can go through the data points way more deeply. Also, a huge missing part, and I'm not sure if Google is going to add these insights, but we would love to see the split between search, display, discovery, YouTube, and shopping, for example. So that's also a thing that's missing and would give us a lot of extra insights if we had them. And there's some few more. So that's the first one, the lack of insights. The second one is the lack of control, basically. Because at this very moment, you have to, in order to add negatives, for example, to your PMax campaign, you have to go through Google support and ask them to add certain negatives. So if you know that it's available and you know this workaround, then you're basically already one step ahead of your competitors. But I think it's very unfair towards the rest of the advertisers, because if it is available, then you should be able to do it on your own. Same goes for placement exclusions. So for the upper funnel campaigns, for the upper funnel networks like Discovery, YouTube, and Display, you basically can add placement exclusions on your account level, but we would like to add them to our PMax campaign only on campaign level. So also some lack of control over there. And there's some more to give you some more examples. For example, different bid strategies on asset level. The only way you can set a bidding strategy right now is by setting a bidding strategy on PMax campaign level. So if you're working with multiple asset groups for different services or different product categories, you're basically telling Google, this is my target, and they are the same for all of my asset groups, which is far too broad in my opinion. You should be able to work with different bidding strategies, but also with different targets. So if you're a car mechanic and you are pushing window repairs or maybe an oil change, these services are having different lifetime values, different customer acquisition costs. So you should be able to bid differently for them, right? And those are just some of the lack of control examples that we're currently facing. And I hope that Google Ads is creating additional features for those to solve these problems and solve this lack of insights and control, but I'm not sure if they will.
Yeah, there certainly seems to be a lot of pushback, especially on the lack of control elements online and having to speak to a rep to do stuff that you should ideally be able to do yourself. So given those constraints that Bob has kind of laid out, Miles, it's not perfect, but what are the best practices if someone is getting started and they're just kind of testing the waters with Performance Max?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's important to preface my answer with, it is still so new. So I think the best practices are still all under development, but there are definitely some things that we see based on our experience for managing our own clients, our own accounts, definitely some things that are worth mentioning. And I think because Performance Max is so new and everybody is struggling with it and fighting it a bit and trying to find their ways, I think people are really coming together to share ideas. So that's really nice. And then we can all just learn and benefit together. The most important things I think we have found so far are, and they kind of piggyback off of what I said earlier in what is important to understand beforehand. So your data input, basically, that needs to be in place. So best practice would be make sure that you understand what your goals are and that you can actually steer on those goals with your conversion tracking. And use enhanced conversions when you're using conversion tracking, which basically solves the issue of lost conversions due to people not accepting cookies or just iOS 14 issues where people just don't want to be tracked. Conversions can sort of be modeled now, which is a whole nother discussion on its own, whether that's trustworthy or not, but definitely try to do as much as you can to make sure that your conversion tracking is working correctly. Then the audience signals, test different audience signals based on your own first-party data, or maybe where someone is in the buying journey. And then one of my favorite topics to talk about that really has a lot of impact on performance, especially for e-commerce, is your campaign structure. So we did a training before, Bob and I, and we spoke about campaign structure for 30 minutes. I can go and riff on this for 3 hours and have a brainstorm about it. So, but to really like condense it, I think what you need to consider is first you need to understand like how does the algorithm really work, and basically what it's just doing is the more data you provide to the algorithm, the better it can sort of predict an outcome in the future. And you need a lot of historical data for that, preferably. And with the campaign structure, we defined we call it the 4 golden rules, but it's just 4 important things to keep in consideration for your campaign structure. And one is just keep it simple, because the second rule is more data is better. So try to keep as much data as you can inside of one campaign, because then the algorithm is usually has a better job optimizing for your goals. And then the third rule is only segment out, which basically means create new campaigns if you have a really good reason to do so. So for us, we usually use for e-com, that is sort of like a base layer campaign structure strategy, where you have 1 or 2, let's say 2 or 3 campaigns segmented by value for your business. So for e-com can be like you have a high value and a low value segment of your products that are high value or low value to your business. And then on top of that, you layer sort of building blocks, and those building blocks can be additional campaigns for your bestsellers, campaigns for products that you want to push because it's a seasonal product. It could be a lot of different reasons to create a separate campaign, but you just got to keep in mind, like, you need to still have enough data inside one campaign to make the whole wider strategy work. Because usually if you create more campaigns, then you're fragmenting your data. And the more you fragment your data, the harder it's going to be to optimize for your bid strategy for the algorithm, unless of course you have like thousands of or a lot of conversions. The number is arbitrary, but a lot of conversions on every campaign, then it's fine. But you just got to keep that into mind. And our last, like, fourth rule of campaign structures is don't copy blindly what someone is telling you to do because it's working for them, but really test what will work for you, because what may work for one brand may not work for the other, and you just gotta test and test and see what works for you. And then when it comes to assets, so the ads that you put into the system, so Google can sort of mix and match and create different ads based on the inventory that's available. You really want to look at creative best practices and tie your ad copy to the product and the image or to the product that's in the image and the video, because Google's just going to combine your headlines with a random image or with a random video and put it anywhere they can. So that needs to be tailored to the specific product or service that you're offering. And there's also like so much that you can talk about when it comes to creative best practices. I think that kind of goes beyond the scope of this session. But there are a lot of considerations there, like optimize for mobile, just to keep it simple, for video. Your image, if you have image ads, make sure that the most important thing is really like clearly visible in the middle, sort of that basic stuff. But I think it all comes down to understanding who your customer is, what problems they have or pain points that you're trying to solve, and then showing that inside of those ads. So that those are like the really like foundational marketing things that you have to think about. And apart from that, it's just, Bob also mentioned a lot of good things. You need to be aware of all the optimizations that you can do, and you need to understand how to read the data that is in your Performance Max campaign. So you have an insights tab, as Bob also said. You have like a few things that you can see there, but there's also one thing that is a bit of a roadblock or a tricky thing, I think, is that on the conversion data that you see on top of the insights tab, it's also including conversions that Google is expecting to get for based on the last 7 days. So let's say it says we got 50 conversions, then in reality you might only have 40, and Google is also already putting in 10 because they think people are still going to convert later on, which is kind of a little bit tricky. And that's why you need to have a plan and an understanding of how the campaigns and the systems work. And that kind of goes beyond just having best practices, like do this and then you'll be successful, because that just doesn't work yet in Performance Max. You really have to like understand why you're making certain decisions. And I think those are just a few things, but the list can go really on and on. But the most important thing is, we're still testing, all of us. We're still trying to figure it out. But there are some shortcuts that you can take already.
Yeah, lots to get started with there for sure. And as you said, it's each case is different, and it is a case of testing to work out what's going to perform in each case. Leo, I'd just like to bring you in on this, because one of the points that has been repeatedly brought up by Bob and Miles is this issue around data quality and making sure that the data that you're feeding to the algorithms is optimized. So, given that there is a lot of invalid traffic and bot traffic online, what kind of issues are caused by invalid and fake traffic contaminating the data that's being sent to Performance Max or any other automated targeting system, regardless of platform?
Yep, good question. I'd even say a lot is an understatement at this age. I think a recent stat published was that just over 60% of the internet is automated. We're constantly seeing scrapers, not just scrape publisher sites, which often end up clicking on display ads, but also social media sites. I think particularly Twitter. There's several use cases where people have run campaign tests on Twitter. Twitter is famous and infamous for the automation opportunities you have within the platform, but that also leads to an influx of wasted clicks. I think particularly to where advertising is shifting towards, it's ensuring that that you are inputting good data in. So the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. That's actually one of the 3 key points that Google pushes across. Google has a knowledge base on machine learning algorithm, and they talk a little bit more about the roadmap in the coming years. And I found it interesting that their second point is they make it clear that the algorithm will only perform as well based on the data that you input. Now, what's funny enough is Google saying, this is based on the data you're inputting. We're not involved over here. At the same time, they're saying, well, we're not going to give you control over these things. So it's somewhat contradictory. I think some of the things that we've seen, I suppose, with clients or experienced ourselves, which is something that most marketers, I believe, could agree on, is just seeing several data discrepancies, where you log into your advertising platform, you see a certain number of clicks, you go into your Google Analytics or whatever analytics platform, you start seeing some different metrics there. You go into your CRM or Shopify, and again, different metrics, different volume, different value per lead. So I do agree with Bob and Miles that having that offline conversion data is super important. It's just making sure that Google is optimizing for valuable data there. But I also think we're seeing the rise of these audiences and positive signals. So it's not just about who you're targeting. It also becomes very much around who are you excluding. We want to reach real customers here, not people. I mean, they could even be real people, but not in their passive state. And I think this is a big win within the advertising community, is identifying active buyers versus passive/invalid traffic, which brings no value at all.
Nice. And just very quickly, Bob, before we move on to talk about smart or automated bidding strategies, is there anything else you want to add on this point about data quality before we kind of proceed?
I think we touched on all the important stuff regarding having your conversion tracking in place, because trash in is trash out. It's a famous saying within online advertising, of course. You should be working with all the availabilities towards improving your conversion tracking that you've got right now. So Miles already touched on enhanced conversions. If you're running Google Ads, for example, you should have these features in place, but you should also take a look at other conversion tracking best practices. For example, a platform I use frequently is Profit Metrics, and they've created something called the Conversion Booster, where they combine the Google tag, the G tag, with offline conversion tracking. So when, for example, the conversion pixel cannot be fired because of ad blockers or script blockers, or maybe the order success page didn't come up, then there's a offline conversion tracking method in place that, and it gets very technical over here, that's looking at the Google Click ID of the actual click and importing the conversion with the Google Click ID and the actual value within Google Ads. So you have that conversion in place that you've otherwise missed. So there are a few techniques and solutions you can look for this very moment, and I think it's very important to do so. So to improve your data, basically. For example, for a lot of clients, I improved my data set, my conversion insights by 15 or even 20% by leveraging these kind of techniques, and that is huge when you're running, for example, on PMax, because it gives you additional conversion volumes for the bidding strategy to learn from and to optimize its bids towards. So yeah, just search for all the possibilities you've got right now to improve your tracking, and do it. So don't analyze, do not read, try and actually set up different tracking methods to improve the quality of your data.
Yeah, 20% is a massive increase. Yeah, it's really
insane.
Yeah,
it's insane.
So I'm just conscious of time. We've got 2 more questions to get through, just to kind of make sure we touched on all the points on the agenda. So moving on to talk more broadly about just smart bidding strategies. Miles, like if you're giving people advice, how would you say they can work out the best bidding strategies to meet their particular goals?
Yeah, good question. And just for the time, I will try to keep it as concise as possible. So I think you need to have think about 2 things beforehand. So in order to determine the right bidding strategy. Well, first of all, with Performance Max, it's super limited. You can only do maximize conversions or maximize conversion value, either with a target CPA or a target ROAS. So it is already super limited in that case. But I think beforehand, you just need to know what your goals are. So it's still surprising to me how many brands still don't really know their numbers. And you need to know your numbers, like what is your break-even ROAS or your break-even cost to acquire a customer? What do you value? Do you value that first initial sale, and can you upsell a lot of different products in the back end, or is that first sale less? There's a lot of things to consider. So that's one, just know your numbers, because you can then translate that to concrete goals inside of Google Ads or any smart bidding technology you're using. And secondly is understanding your risk appetite, I think is important, because some brands, they have a lot of money to test and they just want to learn as fast as possible. But other brands, they might have very little to test with and their risk appetite is super low. So that's also something that you need to factor into the bid strategy that you choose or how you set it up. Because with automated solutions, it is a case of you have a learning curve in the beginning, and the more budget you have, basically, sort of, the faster you can learn, because the more conversions you can get in a short time frame. But if you have only a limited budget, then that's something that you need to consider. So I guess those two are super important. And then also just understanding how the different bid strategies work and what the nuances are between the two of them, because target CPA is actually working a little bit different than a target ROAS. So that's something that you need to be aware of. But just to put it on a high level, I think you need to understand what your goals are and need to know your numbers as a business as a whole. And then secondly, like, determine what's your risk appetite and then go from there.
Nice. Thanks for that, Miles. Solid advice. So for the last question, I kind of want to get everyone's thoughts on this, because I think it'll be interesting to hear different perspectives. So it's kind of a forward-looking question. So what developments and trends are we likely to see in paid media automation over the coming years? Maybe Leo, if you want to start us off on that one, and then we'll kind of get everyone's thoughts before we wrap up.
Oh yeah, love this question. So I think that the future is going to be AI generated images and video. And there's a reason for that. So ad platforms have slowly been shifting towards more of a visual / interactive impact. Search ads include visual assets. Facebook are leading with video. So even image ads that you do input, it's going to try and transform those into video. You now have an option to include audio into images. So, they all in all, they're trying to make these ad campaigns a lot more interactive. And we see this with programmatic display as well. Like running, if you compare the performance of static display versus HTML display, where you have, these effects, hover over effects, etc. Those HTML ads will outperform static ads most of the time. So I think the way things are going with AI generating images and video on the go is where we could possibly be 5 years time, where it might get to the point where text is being generated for us, even images based on what people are searching for, because it's all 101 marketing, meeting the prospects is there at the right time with the right message. What better way to do it with automated dynamic ads?
Yeah, the robots are coming. Bob, do you want to follow on from Leo? Thoughts for paid media automation in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think the playing field is getting leveled for all the advertisers. So imagine it's 2024 and everyone is running Performance Max campaigns. How do you make sure you differ and how do you make sure you stand out? And I think that's a very important question to be thinking about right now already, because you need an edge to win it from your competitors in the near future. So whether that is diving deeper into stuff like ad copy, image creation, landing page optimization, maybe strategic regular marketing topics, I think you have to really step up your game as a Google Ads specialist wise, because everything will be automated in a few years, and you will have to do your job very differently than what you're used to right now. So I'm already starting to dive deeper into stuff like ad copy writing, copywriting, for example, but also stuff like CRO, conversion rate optimization, because I think that will be a huge, basically a huge chunk of my work in the near future. And that's where you will still have a job to do for a lot of clients. I do not think you have to fear for your job, but it will be a lot different in 2024 than what you're doing right now. So be open for changes. Don't be that PPC dinosaur that everyone sees coming, and keep learning.
Nice. Thanks, Bob. And finally, Miles, to wrap it up.
Nice. Now, I just wanted to jump on what Leo said about auto-generated ads. That's actually an interesting one, because Google also has that problem where you have Performance Max, but a lot of advertisers, they don't really know how to create images. So now you can just create images automatically based on, create videos based on images that you already have put into your account. Plus you can add voiceovers, which is AI with an AI voice. It sounds really robotic still right now, but I think in the future it's going to sound really nice. So that's actually a solid point that I never actually thought about. But now that I do see it, like, oh yeah, it makes total sense. And what Bob is saying as well, like, I think, Bob, this is something that I learned from you, especially because you talk about it a lot. Bad offers can't scale. So that's why you're talking about landing page optimization, but also offer optimization. If you're using Performance Max and everything is automated, then you still need to focus on your product or your offer, that service that you're offering. If that's bad, then Performance Max can't scale it for sure. And then just looking ahead, I think, yeah, we don't really know what's going to happen because it's changed. Everything is changing so fast, right? Right now, it's crazy. But I think, even though it's such a hard topic, I think attribution is going to be more super important as well in the future, especially if we do lose cookies. I don't know if we do, because the deadline keeps getting pushed back, but eventually maybe we will, maybe we won't. But that is definitely something that I think is going to be more important in the future, especially as we steer away from keyword targeting and keyword bidding as we know it. I think that is the biggest change and shift that we're seeing right now, is just we don't focus on keywords alone anymore, but we focus more on the person behind the search, the person behind that's watching a video on YouTube or something like that. So I think that's going to be incredibly important, like understanding where your customer is at the right timing and showing them the right ad, whether it be a search ad or a shopping ad or a video or an image, doesn't really matter. And then maybe in the future we'll lose keywords, I don't know, but I think we already lost the keywords sort of, because it's already a lot different than what it was 5-6 years ago because of close match variants, broad match, that is a whole beast of its own. Exact keywords are not exact keywords anymore, so it's already changing a lot into that direction of maybe having a keywordless future. So I don't know if it will actually happen, but maybe it will. But
gradually,
yeah,
and then suddenly, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But which has been happening with everything, basically, with Performance Max as well, right? We had smart shopping, which was really bad at the beginning, and then it was really good, and then boom, it's gone, and we have Performance Max. So Google can just decide, and that's kind of tricky, but also exciting for me as a PPC specialist.
Yeah, lots of question marks, and no one has a crystal ball. So I guess we'll wait and see and take changes as they come. Well, I think we've done all right for time there. I think we've covered all the important points that we wanted to touch on. A special thanks to Bob and Miles for joining us today. It was a really great session. If you could let people know what are the best ways for people to reach out to you both and stay connected with you, and if there's anything else you'd like to mention here before we wrap up today.
Miles, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of content every day. Miles McNair. We started a PPC community on Discord that you can join through the link in my on my profile. And Bob and I actually recently collaborated to create a Performance Max mastery course. And I think we have something special to share. I'm not completely sure about the details. I know you know this, Bob, so maybe you can share like how people can get their hands on that if they're interested.
Yeah, sure. We've launched a Performance Max Mastery course indeed. We will open up again on the 1st of September. I think, yeah, we will open up by the 1st of September, and we will have a discount code, which is Lunio, for you to use in the checkout to get 50 euros off. So instead of 150 euros, you can join and take the course for just 100 euros and learn everything about Performance Max. And this is not your what is PMax kind of course, but we actually dive deeper into advanced structures and optimizations you can use. So make sure to check it out. I think, James, there will be a link towards our course somewhere. And if you want to check my profile and follow my content, you can check me out on LinkedIn as well. Just search for Bob Meijer. And I try to post PPC related content every day for you to learn from as well, just like Miles. So make sure to check it out as well.
Nice, thanks, Bob. And likewise, if you have any questions for us, I know Leo will be happy to chat. What's the best way for people to connect with you, Leo?
Yep. So likewise on LinkedIn. I'm even thinking that so after this webinar is done, we will be redirecting users to a resource page. So we've put together. We thought, we don't want to leave you guys empty-handed or with the knowledge we've just provided. We've compiled a page with ungated resources. So there will be a guide on advertising a privacy-first world. You'll get a link to the community, a link to the course, but then you'll also be able to connect with us directly from that page.
Nice.
So pretty much everything that you need is going to be on that page. So stay tuned.
You will also have the ability to download a lot of PPC memes, right?
Yes. And we're going 100 PPC memes, I believe. 100 PPC memes.
I think that's the most important takeaway of this whole webinar.
Absolutely. Yeah, make sure you don't miss those. So yeah, you'll be redirected straight there once this session ends. But anyway, just to wrap up, big thanks to everyone for tuning in, either here at the live event or on demand. Our next webinar will be announced very shortly. So if you find this one useful, it would be great to see you at the next one as well. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.